using AutoGPT to automate your goals. Hey everyone, this is KeyStrokes. I'm a senior software engineer at one of the FANGs, and I like to make videos on anything and everything about computer science, like ChatGPT, AI, ML, interview tips, lead code, and basically anything and everything about computer science. Today, we'll take a look at AutoGPT, which really steps up all the AI ML work that has been done so far. And as the name implies, AutoGPT is very autonomous and it can help you automate anything you want to do with GPT models. So let's see everything that we'll be covering today. We'll start by learning some basics of AutoGPT, then we'll go through the setup of AutoGPT. There are so many ways to set this up, and I will go through the most simple setup so that you can get this running as quickly as possible. And then we'll use AutoGPT to learn the Python programming language, and then we'll play around a bit and see some more examples. So we all have heard about ChatGPT. So now what's AutoGPT? Well, AutoGPT is just a fancy way to use the GPT models and make them more independent. And not to scare you, AutoGPT basically makes the GPT models to have thoughts and chain them to accomplish any tasks. And because LLMs are thinking, they have their own chain of thoughts and it makes them autonomous, and so they can achieve the goals autonomously. And just to put your mind at ease, in this case, the goals are not to take over the world, but I won't be surprised if tomorrow some library comes out which actually does that. Anyhow, jokes apart, let's take a look at an example of what this chain of LLM thought looks like. So here's one chain of thought where I basically ask AutoGPT to help me learn basics of Python programming language. And you can see the first thing is thoughts. And here it basically says, I should start by introducing the basics of Python programming language to beginners. And it's just explaining what it's thinking. And then it gives you a reason about its thought. It's trying to justify why it should start with a simple program that prints hello world. And then based on that thought, it creates a plan which will help accomplish the goal. In this case, one of the points of the plan is to create a Python file that prints hello world to the console. It also criticizes itself, and it clearly says that it needs to be careful to not overwhelm the learner with too much information at once. So it's a very understanding bot, which is amazing. And then we have this speak section. With AutoGPT, you can enable text to speech. That almost sounds like having your own Jarvis from Iron Man. So if you enable the speech mode, then these are the lines that you'll hear back. And then the final section is the next action, which basically says which command to run. In this case, it's write to file, and then it has some arguments. And these arguments are defined for each command. And so for the write to file command, the argument it takes are file name, which is the file it should write, and then text, which is the content it should write to the file. And that's pretty amazing. AutoGPT is enabling LLMs to have thoughts, give you reasons for those thoughts, create a plan based on it, criticize itself, and then figure out what it should be doing next, and give it a human touch by what it can speak out. So let's quickly take a look at all the features that AutoGPT has. It uses GPT-4 and GPT-3 models. It has access to the internet, so now you're not limited to GPT's limitation of how much data it's trained on, and you can basically access the internet to get the latest news and basically make it act like a human and get all the latest news. AutoGPT also enables memory, where it stores everything it's been doing so far, because we all know that context size can become a problem, and the more context we pass, the pricier it gets. So memory becomes really handy here, and it writes things to files and database, and that serves as its memory. You can also use advanced features like executing the code, where it will literally write some code on your system and then run them. And of course, you can enable any plugins that you can use with ChatGPT, and even write your own and make this more and more powerful. And talking about powerful, there are so many commands available in AutoGPT, and you can write your own commands, and you can make those commands available through your prompts to the LLM, and then the chain of LLM thought can use these commands, and it just becomes more and more powerful. I know all of this sounds very exciting, and all of you out there who love prompts, you must be itching to see how the prompts look like. And we'll take a look at it, but first let's run AutoGPT, let's set it up, and let's run some examples. But feel free to use the timestamps and jump to prompts if you can't wait to see them. So let's take a look at the requirements and how to set up AutoGPT. And there are so many ways to set this up, and we'll be using the most minimal setup so that you can get started as fast as possible. As for requirements, you will need Python 3.10 or later, so make sure that you have that installed. And then we'll need a code editor. I'll be using VS Code and I'll be on Mac. And then you may or may not need Docker, depending on what you want to do. In our first example, we'll be running some Python code, so we will need Docker installed. Otherwise, you can run AutoGPT without Docker if you want to. So let's jump into the setup, and the first thing we'll do is check out AutoGPT from Git. Okay, so let's go to the AutoGPT repository on GitHub. I have it right here. Now here, you can either directly download the zip or you can clone the repository. I'm going to clone it, so I'm going to use this URL, but please feel free to download the zip. It will be the same thing. I'm going to switch back to the IDE. I'll be using VS Code, and here I'm in the AutoGPT directory, and I've opened this directory in my VS Code workspace. So the first thing I'll do is clone the repository using git clone command, and I'll paste the URL I just copied. So running this in my terminal here, you can see it's cloning it into AutoGPT, and we have this AutoGPT folder created. And that's all there is to check out the project from GitHub. Okay, now that we have AutoGPT checked out, let's go to OpenAI and grab the API key, and we'll put it in the .env file. Also, you might want to have a paid account for OpenAI, because on the free version, you get to make 3 API calls every minute, which sort of gets pretty slow because the LLMs have a lot of thoughts. And I started with a free account, but I got so excited while I was using AutoGPT, and I just signed up for a paid account. And each run doesn't charge you a lot, honestly, but the executions do go faster. So I will really suggest you to set up a paid account for OpenAI, but make sure you set up some billing limits so that you don't end up with a huge bill accidentally. Now, let's get into this AutoGPT directory and run a command to copy this .env.template file to create another file called .env, and for that, we'll run this command cp.env.template and we'll copy it as .env. So let's run this command, and we can see a .env file just got created here. So let's open this .env file, and you'll see there are a bunch of settings here, and it's just a lot of settings, and I'll really recommend you to go through them one by one just so that you know what are the options available to you. The most important option is this OpenAI API Key, and this is where we'll put our OpenAI API Key from OpenAI. So just delete this and paste your key here. I'll be pasting my key off the screen, so let me make the change really quick. Okay, so now I have my OpenAI API key in this .env file, and now the next setting that I'd like to change is to allow this execute local commands and make it to true, and uncomment this so that it takes effect. And as you can read the comments up here, it basically allows local command execution, and we are enabling this because we are going to ask AutoGPT to teach us Python programming language, and it might require running of some commands. But feel free to revert it back to default if you're worried about AI running local commands on your machine. So let's save this env file, and that's all what's needed from the env file. Another thing that I want to talk about is the Workspace folder of AutoGPT. If you expand this AutoGPT folder, you will see a Workspace folder that will be created here as we run our commands. And that Workspace is briefly mentioned here as well. It will be called AutoGPT Workspace. And because we have just checked out this repository, this folder is not created yet here. But when we run our first command, we'll see that this folder will get created here. And that's where AutoGPT will be storing all of its files. And as we'll run through our examples, AutoGPT will want to save some files. And in our first example, as we'll be learning Python programming language and we'll be running some code, AutoGPT will want to use Docker to run the Python commands and any Python files that get created in this AutoGPT workspace. So one setting that you would like to do is to open Docker preferences, go to file sharing, and just add this AutoGPT folder as a resource here. Otherwise, Docker will not be able to access the Python files in this folder and your runs may fail. So let me quickly do that here. Okay, so here you can see that I've added this AutoGPT folder, and once you do that, just apply and restart. Okay, so now everything is set up and now it's time to run it. And before we do that, if you've been liking the video so far, please don't forget to like the video and to subscribe to my channel, and please show me your support by buying me some coffee or signing up on Patreon. And you can also set up one-on-ones with me where we can discuss several things. Like I can guide you through the basics of learning how to code, I can help you with interview preparations, or different computer science topics like data structures, algorithms, and other technology topics. I can also be a consultant on your project ideas and help you with execution, and I can also help you with ChatGPT integration into your website and all the fancy machine learning AI topics that are coming up. So feel free to fill out the form and reach out to me and we can discuss anything and everything about computer science. Okay, so now let's jump back and try out the magic of AutoGPT. Okay, so now we have AutoGPT checked out. We have the .env file set up. We have the OpenAI API Key in. Docker has permissions. So I think we are ready to run AutoGPT. So let's see what command will run to run AutoGPT. So I'm doing everything on a Mac, and if you're using Windows or any other operating system, the commands might be slightly different. On Mac, we'll be running this run.sh file. On Windows, you might want to run run.bat file. And I'll highly recommend you to check out the documentation in case you face any issues when running AutoGPT. But please feel free to post your issues in the comments and I'll try my best to address them. Okay, so the command we'll be running is run.sh, and this takes in several options, and one of the options is GPT-3 only. Unfortunately, I still don't have access to GPT-4. I'll be trying this out with GPT-3 and try out its magic. Another flag that you can add is the debug flag, and you can use this if you're interested to see how things work behind the scenes, what the raw LLM outputs are. Then please feel free to add this. Remember that it gets very noisy. So for now, we won't be using this flag, but it's very helpful if you want to see what's happening behind the scenes. Okay, so let's grab this command and let's run this. If it's your first time running, then it might take some time as it might have to install a lot of Python dependencies. I think I have most of them already installed, so my run might be faster. But just a heads up, it might be slow for you if it's your first time running this. Okay, so let's run this command and we can see it's trying to install some missing packages. So we'll let it do its work and we'll be right back. Okay, so now all the dependencies are installed and now it's saying press enter to continue. So let's hit enter. It looks like we're running on master branch and this is not a supported branch. If you go back to the repository, I think there was a warning about this. Here it says use stable, not master. So let me quickly switch the branches and I'll restart this. Okay, so now I have the stable branch running here and we can see we need to provide an input here. I want AutoGPT to do something and our goal will be as a beginner learn basics of Python. So let's see how it achieves this goal. Okay, so here we can see here it creates a PyBasics GPT and it defines its role, which is it helps beginners learn the basics of Python, and it defines a bunch of goals as well, like give clear and concise explanations of Python concepts and so on. And then if we scroll down further, we can see it's thinking more and it's providing its thoughts, reasoning, and other related information. So its first thought is that as an initial step, let's start by providing the user with some basic information about Python and how to get started with it. And then it gives a reason why it's thinking so. And then it gives a plan about what it'll be doing. It has no criticism, which is pretty cool. And then we can see that the next action is this execute shell command and the input is Python 3 version. So to continue, we can press Y and hit enter and then it will take this next action. So let's do it and see how it works. So we can see that it tried to execute the command and the output actually is Python 3.10.9 and that's what I've installed on my machine. So now with this output, it's thinking further on what it should be doing next. And while it's thinking, I quickly want to show this AI settings file that it created when we provided our goal to it. And if we open this AI settings file, we can see the same goals that we saw before. We can see the same AI name, the same role, and any API budget that we have. So if we shut the program right now and run it again, it will try to resume from here. So it tries to store all the information about the AI in this file. So let's continue with this and see what its next thought and reasoning is. Okay, so now the next thought is great. It looks like Python is already installed on a system, and then its reasoning is that Python is installed on user system, so we can skip the installation process and move on to writing some basic Python code. And then it talks about the plan again. It has no criticism again. And the next command it's suggesting to run is analyze code, and with the code as print hello world. Okay, so let's authorize this command and see what happens. And you can see it can get very tiring if you have to authorize one command at a time. So a very handy shortcut is to do hyphen and the number of commands that you want to authorize. In this case, I'll just put 2. So I'm just authorizing this command and the next command. Ideally, you can authorize as many commands as you want to do, but just remember, sometimes AutoGPT, it can keep running and you just don't want to get surprised with a high bill from OpenAI. Anyhow, so let's continue with this. The command got authorized and it's analyzing the code and it's thinking. And while it's thinking, let's take a look at the AutoGPT workspace that I mentioned of earlier. If I expand this, we can see there are 2 files created here. and I think they'll be mostly empty right now. But if it starts to save any file, then it will all end up right here. Okay, so now it looks like we have our next thought and command, and the next command is to execute shell, and now it wants to run Python 3. So let's run this and see what happens. And because we have already authorized 2 commands, it knows how many more commands are left, so it's continuing without any intervention from us right now. But I'm going to interrupt this program so that we can do something more fun. So to interrupt this program, I'll simply do Ctrl+C, and that should abort it. Okay, so let's try a different example. I've reset AutoGPT here, I've deleted the AI settings file and any local files that were created, and let me start AutoGPT again. So other than AI and ML, the other trending topic that really interests me is quantum computing. So let's see if AutoGPT can compile latest news about quantum computing. So our goal can be, I want AutoGPT to create a summary of the latest news about quantum computing. Let's see what this does. Okay, so here we can see that we have a new AI called QCGPT, which I guess is Quantum Computing GPT, and it's an agent that provides up-to-date and accurate information on the latest news and developments in the field of quantum computing. And it has a bunch of goals defined here. Now let's see what it does next. Now it says it should start by checking the latest news and developments in the field of quantum computing. It gives its reasons. For the plan, it says check reputable sources for the latest news and developments, and so on. And if you take a look at the next action, it says that the command is Google, and the argument is to search for latest news and developments in quantum computing. So let's authorize this command. This will basically use Google, get some results, which we can see right here, and then it continues its magic. Up here, we can see there were some warnings, like TTG is deprecated. I think this is because behind the scenes, we did not put an API key for Google, so it's falling back to DuckDuckGo search engine. And there were some library updates, but that shouldn't affect our usage of AutoGPT. Anyhow, so let's scroll down. So we have a bunch of results here, and it's thinking more. Let's see what it comes up with. Okay, so now the next thought is to analyze the news articles to identify the most important and relevant updates. And here, if we take a look at the next command, it's write to file, and it's going to write to this location, which is the AutoGPT workspace, into this file, and it will put all of these text in there. So let's authorize this command as well. So if we scroll up in our file structure, we can see we have this quantum news text file, and it basically put everything that we saw in the next action. So let's wait and see what its next thought is going to be. Okay, so now it's saying that it should provide a summary of the most important and relevant updates to the users, and the next command is to read the file, and it's the same file that it wrote back to. I guess that's how it's maintaining its memory. So let's authorize this command, and let's see what it does next. Okay, so here we can see when we authorize the previous command, the read file command returned whatever was in the file, and the next thought is to provide a summary of the news article to the users. And the next command, interestingly, is send tweet, and it has composed a tweet for us that we can put out. Ideally, I wouldn't be sending a tweet here, and this is where I'll halt the run and I will restart my execution with the goal phrased slightly differently, because I'm not interested to send the tweet, but rather I just want a summary of what the latest trends are. So sometimes it picks the wrong commands, and we can prevent this by having a block list of commands that shouldn't ever be run. In this case, we could have added send tweet as a command that shouldn't be used at all, and then we wouldn't run into this problem. So this sort of shows that AutoGPT is configured to do anything like search on Google, send tweets, write to file, read from the files, and all of this comes out of the box when you use AutoGPT. You can write your own commands and connect to your own APIs and just make it more powerful. And just like using ChatGPT, sometimes you have to change your prompts, you have to change your goals and see what works the best. So here, let's see if we can use the command S to give it some self-feedback. So it looks like it got a feedback that your thought process and plan are sound and align well with your role as an AI agent, which provides up-to-date and accurate information on quantum computing. However, it would be beneficial to prioritize the most significant updates and provide more in-depth analysis, and so on. And it's basically self-critiquing itself and giving feedback to itself on how it can improve. So let's see what it has further. Now the next thought is that it should browse the web to find more information, and so it will use the Google command and search for latest developments in quantum computing. And this was just a result from self-feedback. So let's authorize this command and let's see what happens. So it again performed a Google search, it got a bunch of results, and now it's thinking what to do with it. Okay, so now the next thought is to read through the articles and identify the most important and relevant updates, and you can read the rest of the reasoning and plan. And now the next command is to get text summary, and it will create a summary from this URL, and the question it will be asking is, what are the latest developments in quantum computing? So let's authorize this and see what it produces. Okay, so this looks pretty cool. It knew the length of the text, it created some chunks out of it, it summarized that chunk, and created a summary of that one chunk. And here's a system output that the command returned this result, which is basically a summary of that whole article. So let's see what's its next thought. This looks good. Now the next command is to write to file, and it will be creating a file called quantum computing summary, and it will be putting the text, which is the summary that it created earlier. So let's authorize this, and we can see that a file got created right here, which has the summary of what we just saw. Now let's see what it does next. Okay, so now the next thought is to read more about the wireless technique for sending and receiving data without generating too much heat. And at first, I was like, how does it make sense in terms of quantum computing? And if you read the reasoning, it says that it's a significant development in quantum computing, and providing more information to the user will help them understand the implications of the development, which sort of makes sense. I'm not an expert on quantum computing, so I'm going to trust the LLM here, even if it's hallucinating. So now the next command is to browse the website, and it will go to the URL here, and it will try to find the answer to this question. So this sort of shows how flexible AutoGPT is, and how it can keep going to different websites, create summaries out of them, and let's say if you authorize these commands like 10 to 20 times, then you will have a very good summary about quantum computing. It's still not 100% foolproof. It can fail sometimes as it's heavily under development, and all of this is still in experimental phase, but we can clearly see how powerful AutoGPT is. It can help you learn things, it can create summaries for you, and basically the possibilities become endless. So please post in comments what kind of goals are you going to try, and if you get any good results out of AutoGPT. I hope that was exciting for you, and now it's time that we look under the hood and take a look at all the prompts that were used to do all of this LLM thinking. Okay, so let's take a look at the prompts. So the first prompt is where it creates the AI to solve the goal, and this is how the prompt looks like. It basically says that your task is to devise up to 5 highly effective goals, and these are the goals that we saw, and an appropriate role-based name, something GPT, and that explains the AI naming convention for an autonomous agent, ensuring that the goals are optimally aligned with the successful completion of its assigned task. The user will provide the task, you will provide only the output in the exact format specified below with no explanation or conversation. And here's an example, help me with marketing my business, and if that's the input, then we are giving an example of the AI with name CMO GPT. It gives a description and then a few of the goals which relates to the example goal that was given. So that's the first prompt that's run that creates our AI, and it defines our goals. Now the second prompt, which is the actual chaining of thoughts, is very interesting and it's very thorough. So here I have an example where an AI was created which was called LearnProgGPT, which is learn programming, and it's basically an AI assistant that helps beginners learn programming by providing personalized guidance and so on. So this is the name that we get from the first prompt, which was here. This was a description that was generated, which gets put right here, and the prompt further says what the OS is in case it needs to run any commands. And then it puts all the goals that was returned by the first prompt. Here we can see we get these goals as an example, which would ideally be put over here. So most of it is auto-generated from the first prompt. And below we have some more fun stuff, like constraints. We have 4000 word limit for short-term memory. If you're unsure about how you previously did something, then it says how to handle it. There is no user assistance, and just use the commands listed that are in double quotes below. And I have formatted this prompt further just so that we can read it. We can see all the commands that's available, and we pass all of these to the LLM, and we make these available to it, so it just becomes more powerful. And you can definitely add your own commands here and enhance this further. Then after the commands, it talks about resources, what kind of agents it can create, file output, long-term memory management, internet access, and you can add more resources if you want to make them available. And then it talks about how the performance should be evaluated. It says, always review and analyze your actions to ensure that you're performing to the best of your abilities, self-criticize yourself, reflect on past decisions and strategies, and the most important one is that every command has a cost, so be smart and efficient, which is very important given how costly these things can get, and write all code to a file. I think this can be improved more, and it all just comes back to prompt engineering, and sky is the limit here. And then this is the most fun part, where we say that the response should only be in a JSON format, where we say we have a text, which is your thought, then give a reasoning, which is the reasoning, and then a plan that we have seen as short bullet points, and then criticism about itself, and then speak, which is basically what it will say. And then the most important one, which is the command, which gets enabled from the list that we had above. So it will basically give a command and the arguments, and we tell how to create a response for that. So we say this will be the command to run, and these are the arguments that we should run it with. So this JSON response from LLM is what we parse and figure out the next command, and we keep running this over and over again. And if you look at the commands, one of the command is task complete, which is basically when the task is done and we can stop our chain of thought. So these are the two prompts that power AutoGPT, and you can tweak them and make them more powerful. So you can work through these prompts, play around with it, and tweak it so you get better performance. And the library is pretty extensive, and if you have the energy and the motivation, I would suggest going through the code and see where all of these bits and pieces are done and enhance them as much as you'd like. It's impossible to have one prompt that solves all the problems, and so AutoGPT has created this amazing framework, and now it's up to us individuals how we use it, how we change the library, and customize it to our needs. And let's also talk about the limitations and what you can do to get around it. And let's not forget that all of this is still experimental, and it's expected that the runs might get stuck sometimes, the outputs might be horrible, and maybe it does something completely different. And while I was playing with AutoGPT, I have fine-tuned it a lot. I have tried several examples, and many of them did not produce the results that I was expecting, but that's primarily because it's still an evolving field, and it's up to the individuals to get the right results. So let's see what can we do to do that. So as you run through the LLM thoughts, you can provide it some manual feedback, which it can incorporate into its next thoughts, or you can try to write your goals differently. When I was trying to run the goal to learn Python through AutoGPT, I tried to write my goal in several different ways, and only a few of them worked pretty well, and that's what we looked at today. Also, when you specify your goals, AutoGPT creates a list of goals that we saw as part of the first prompt. You can modify that so that the chain of LLM thoughts, they can use those modified goals. And so providing these little supervisions here and there, it can drastically improve the performance of these upcoming libraries. And because we already covered how the prompts look like, you can go advanced and you can change the prompts, customize it, and go deep into it and use your skills of prompt engineering to improve the library further. So keep trying, make improvements, and please share any amazing things that you do with AutoGPT. Please post them in the comments. Okay, so that's all I had for the video. I hope now you understand how you can use AutoGPT, and I just can't wait to see all the amazing things that you all will do with AutoGPT and with the power of chain of LLM thoughts. If this video was helpful, then please don't forget to like the video and to subscribe to the channel, and you can follow me on Twitter, and please show me your support by buying me some coffee, and you can join me on Patreon. Also, please feel free to reach out to me for one-on-ones and any consultations, and please let me know of any other topics that you'd like me to cover. I'm working on more GPT and these ML related topics, so the next video should be coming out soon. In the meantime, check out this video on your screen and learn more about GPT and what else you can do with it. Thank you so much for joining in. I'll see you next time.